Boruto Tubula Vortex Chapter 18 starts with Sumire walking back into the lab. She's kind of like, She's kind of like walking back after a conversation with Sarda. She's down in the dumps, all right? She going back to the lab, back to her 9 to 5, whatever she's doing. She lets a little boop, 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 goes into the lab. And who's there but Kawaki choking Amado with the life out of him, pinned against the wall. And he's kind of like, calm down, Sumire, all right? I'm just talking to Amado, okay? And so he's choking Amado, and he's basically telling him, give me back my strength. Give me back my powers. Stop taking away my strength to fight. You know what I mean? And then Amado says, only babble in your sleep, Kawaki. And then we get a look at, like, Kawaki. He passes out. He knocks out, and he falls onto the floor. And Sumire realizes that, like, oh, snap. Kawaki's just like Delta. There's an emergency shutdown code to, like, deactivate him or to get him to stop fighting or whatever. It just shuts him down. And so Amado kind of tells Sumire, hey, thanks for coming in. Can you help me move his body really quick? And so then we cut over to the mission with Konohamaru and Sarada now split up and doing their own thing. So Sarada and Mitsuki introduce Ryu to Yodo and Arya, and they're going to be splitting up and looking for clues. And then Ryu's kind of looking at Yodo, and he goes like, she's looking at me funny, like, why is she glaring at me? And then they have to, like, calm it down. They're like, that's just Yodo, that's just how she is, whatever. We cut over to Konohamaru and Matsuri, and Matsuri's like, can I call you Konohamaru-chan? And then Konohamaru starts thinking about Moegi, how she's always called him Konohamaru-chan. She's kind of like the only one that does that. So then we look at Ryu and everybody else, like, they start looking for clues, and Ryu lets out, like, his iron sand, and he starts, like, investigating the area, so he can use the sand to investigate, look around, kind of find what clues are there. And Mitsuki asks Ryu that, like, Boruto's a traitor of the Hidden Leaf Village. That's why we're after him. Why are you guys after him? And Ryu has to explain that, well, Boruto knows a little bit too much about us, and and Jura tells us that he's a threat, and he knows about the thorn bulb. So because of that, we kind of have to eliminate him. We just need to find him and get rid of him, and, everything will be okay after that. And Sarda is kind of saying, well, let's say, if Boruto knows about the thorn soul bulbs, wouldn't it be good bait to, like, use one of those thorn bulbs to draw him in? Like, we're going to use the thorn bulb as bait to get Boruto over here. That's a logical idea. And so I think Ryu's kind of like, yeah, maybe. So then we cut over to Kawaki and Amado talking some more, and Kawaki wakes up, and Amado's like, all right, good, you're awake. Now calm down. Let's have a reasonable discussion about this, okay? I will give you the strength that I will enhance your powers as you want, Kawaki, but only if you put a karma on my daughter Akebi, and that's how she'll be brought back to life. I tried doing it over and over and over again. It just didn't work. But with this Otsutsuki power, with the karma seal, I've embedded her DNA or her data into your karma, and if you implant one on her on this other model I made, she'll be able to come back to life. And Kawaki says, well, basically Kawaki starts telling him that, like, if your daughter turns out to be another Otsutsuki, I will kill her. And Amado says, fine, if she turns out to be an Otsutsuki, which is unlikely, if she becomes an Otsutsuki, you can kill her, but I am going to fight you back with all that I have. And then Kawaki says, no, I'm not going to be planting my karma onto your daughter. And Amado's like, why? Come on, please. And Kawaki has to tell him that, like, listen, it's not so much about me helping you out or putting the karma on her. It's the sequences of events, okay? I need you to enhance me to deal with all of the enemies that we have to face, okay? I'm not going to just make your daughter an Otsutsuki, another problem to deal with, okay? First, I have the divine trees, I have Boruto, I have Code, I have all of these different enemies coming after us. I'm not going to just add another one to the list, okay? So here's what's going to happen. I need you to enhance me to defeat all the other Otsutsukis out there, okay? I need you to make me a bigger and badder monster than anything else that's out there. And once that's done, only when that's done, will I revive your daughter with the karma. And Amado's kind of like, like, he kind of accepts that, like, okay, this is the only way that he's going to actually help me out here, bring my daughter back. So then we cut back to Konohamaru and Sarada going up against the Shinju, or meeting the Shinju or whatnot. And Matsuri starts to call Konohamaru Konohamaru-chan. And Konohamaru's kind of like, hold on, can you not call me that? Sorry, there's only one person who really calls me that, and it's kind of weird for you to do it, you know what I mean? And Matsuri is kind of like, and who would that be? You talking about Moegi? You talking about Moegi, huh? And then she starts getting jealous. She starts getting a little bit more irritated and angry. And then she's like, who is she to you? Tell me. And then she gets like her tendrils or whatever. She starts like gearing up to attack Konohamaru. She's like, answer me. Otherwise, you know what I mean? It looks like she's going to fight Konohamaru. And then we cut over to Ryu. And he's like, okay, I'm going to let out my thorn bulb. So he lets it out. And he can still like function even with him getting it out or whatever. So he lets it out, and then Yodo just jumps straight for it, tries to reach and grab it to save Shinki. She's so eager to do it. She has no sense of patience. And then she's like stopped midair. And she's kind of like, what's going on? And Ryu acknowledges that like, it was always going to end up this way. I had a feeling this was going to happen. So it turns out that his iron sand that he let out and spread all over the place, he can manipulate and control it and even control people's bodies. So he stopped her midair. He starts to control Sarada with his iron sand, and he's able to manipulate them to attack each other. And then Sarada's about to hit Yodo when a slice in the air happens, and Sarada becomes free, and so does Yodo. And it's revealed that Arya has like a sword. He calls it the Lodestone Sand Sealing Blade, and he was able to slice through the iron sand and free Sarada and Yodo. And it's implied that Shinki kind of helped him create the weapon, or it's something to do with his iron sand. It's something that Arya and Shinki kind of connection there. There's something there to like fight or go against the iron sand or whatever. So with that sliced, he frees Sarada and Yodo, and now it's going to be Arya versus Ryu. He's going to be the one to attack and face Ryu and his iron sand, and that's where the chapter ends. And this chapter had a lot of things. Again, it's just building up and building up. It's not Amado actually powering up Kawaki. It's them coming to the agreement. It isn't actually it's the start of them fighting against the Shinju, but it was more so like gaining information. They were learning about why the Shinju were after Boruto. It's about splitting up the Shinju so that way Konohamaru can deal with Matsuri, and then the others can deal with Ryu, and so on and so forth. So we're slowly building up. And I think next chapter we're going to see them fighting. We're going to see some real action, some real fighting. So I guess it's more so like, again, build up to the actual moment, and these are the little parts and pieces that we need to learn about what's going on. There wasn't really any action in this chapter, except for, I guess, Arya saving Yodo and Sarada, but even that was just like very minimal, so barely any of that. We know that now Kawaki has a concrete goal in powering up, and then once he defeats all the other Otsutsukis, namely Boruto, Code, the Divine Trees, he's going to save Amado's daughter, and that's kind of the direction that they're going in. That's the agreement, at least. And then we know that Yodo kind of ruined everything by jumping for the thorn bulb, so now they know that that's what they're after, and they start fighting. So moving on, it's a lot. Character-wise, we learned a little bit about Amado, what he really wants. Well, what he's basically always wanted, but now he's like getting a direct confirmation that like, help Kawaki gain his power, be at full strength, defeat everybody else, and then I'll have my daughter back. And yeah, I think that's interesting. And it's also just interesting to know that the Shinju are after Boruto because he knows too much. And then there's also knowing that like the world is going to change as they continue down this path, as the story continues to move forward with these agreements in place, you know, with the agreement that Kawaki now being boosted and powered up, he's going to be he's going to be even crazier strong than he was before, you know, so he's going to be pushing that forward. There's also going to be the Shinju are no longer going to be able to trust the shinobi. So that whole, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Konohamaru, all this other stuff, like, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. Because now it's do or die. They either defeat the Shinju right here and now, or in the future, they're just going to be straight up attacking each other. So we'll see how that goes. And then the ending, we get to see the Lodestone Sand Sealing Blade, which I think was a cool little mystery, a cool little idea of like, oh, he has a way to counter the Iron Sand. So I think that's cool. So I think overall, I give this chapter a 7.8 out of 10. It was, again, we're just building up. We're rolling down the mountain, and eventually we're gonna hit some bumps, and we're gonna start to pick up speed and really start going in on the action, on the story, learning new things, and having things actually happen, as opposed to going out there and just getting started. And that's where I feel like we are right now, and this new phase of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. But until the next chapter, until we see how Arya used the Lodestone Sand Sealing Blade, until we see how Konohamaru deals with Matsuri, it's all kind of up in the air right now. But anyways, 7.8. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah.